Good afternoon. Pleasure to be here. And as MD mentioned, I've known him since we used to sit next to each other in school. And then the years went by, and I came back to India after nearly 16, 17 years in the US. And when I got back, MD was, he was, I think, the MD of Dell's back office or something like that, remember? So, and that's when I discovered that there's this eruption of customer service units all over India. And I used to bring our executive education people to visit Dell and get shown around and how the whole customer service sector operated, which was always a good, very good insight. And just speaking from the perspective of a customer, what you all do and what you all accomplish actually makes a huge impact, because anytime we get good service, that brand becomes something that we think very positively about. So there's no two questions of the fact that you're adding tremendous value. I actually, a lot of this was also categorized as BPO, right? And there was a time when people, would look down on BPO. And I would, whenever some parent would come and say, give advice to my son or daughter, he wants to go work in a BPO, I'd just send him, because you're going to get a chance to learn to be professional and to take care of people and all their concerns. And I think that's excellent training, especially in a country where we don't give too much attention to those things, right? So I really think that this sector and what you're all up to is really wonderful stuff.
Rajeev, sorry, quick background over here. People are all, there's really nobody from a BPO as such over here. They're all from brands across industries. We've got banks, we've got insurance, we've got technology, Adobe, Dell, ICICI, Prudential.
Yeah, but it's chief customer officers, right? Yeah. So I'm just talking broadly in that broad sense. Yeah, but I'm going to take on this. He interrupted me. I'm going to dispute him again. We went like that in school, but now we can start now. I think you guys call yourselves chief customer officers. The chief customer officers are us, the members of parliament, the MLAs. Anyway, so that's really what I wanted to actually spend some time discussing. What happens to us? Because we are, in some sense, elected by voters rather than customers, and then the expectations from us in terms of service, in terms of delivery, are just really crazy. They're very diverse, and I think Modi is probably going through that right now. The expectation that, hey, you sold us some kind of a bill of goods, and now show us what you're going. We want to experience what you offered. But I won't go to the policy level. That's a much more complicated story. But if you look at members of parliament or members of the legislature, typically there's a lot of expectation of service delivery right here on the ground. Okay, and that becomes a very tricky subject. And when I say tricky subject, you might be aware of the road is not it's got too many potholes, something else is a problem. But the kinds of issues that an MLA or an MP deals with are much more complicated, right? So, for example, you would get phone calls in the middle of the night. Right? There's actually a delightful story my colleague, our former railway minister Dinesh Trivedi says, right? So he says once at 2 a.m. in the morning he got a call from a voter saying, "Sir, this is Bolu." And he says, "Okay, Bolu, okay, what's up? Yeah, tell me." And he says, "Sir, my wife has run away." So Dinesh Trivedi says, "So are you happy or sad?" Like, how should I respond to you? Okay, so that's the kind of thing. You don't know what kinds of questions, what kinds of responses they want from you. And typically, the other kinds of things are they want you to call a police station. Someone's in some kind of trouble. And so, however much we want to be people who focus on the high road and the noble stuff, most often people call you to resolve problems which are a little more unsavory. Okay, so that's just the nature of life. But I've actually seen people, I would sort of categorize the calls that we get on two fronts, right? One are what you might call first resort, and the other are last resort. First resort calls are basically people who are very lazy and opportunistic. They want to get a license, they don't want to show up there, they'll just call and say, you call and make it happen, right? As if, have you put in that little bit of effort, you would have got it automatically? No, it's just, they're just taking advantage of you and the fact that they expect you to do so much for them. The last resort ones are even more complicated. People come to you after they've tried every legal way and they say, well, this is not happening. The system is refusing to give us what we want. Now you get it for us. And then we'll call and then be told that the rules say this and that. And then the constituent will say, boss, if I could get it legally, why would I come to you? Your job is to fix the system and make it happen. Why did I vote for you? Why did I campaign for you? Right? So this is the sort of thing that keeps challenging us all the time. Anyway, so this sort of thing, and then of course, you may be interacting with customers in fairly well organized settings. For us, it's not like that, right? Especially during the time when transfers take place. You wake up in the morning and there's someone sitting by a bed saying, call this guy, come to this minister. It's as bad as that. They're obsessed about being transferred back to Bangalore or something like that. And they will eat your life up night and day until that's done. And once it's done, you'll never see them again. Okay, that's the other side of the whole story. So these can be quite challenging in terms of how we respond to people and how we take care of our customers. But this gets even more complicated because one thing about people asking you to break rules and get things for them, but there's another fact, which is that the system that we're trying to influence, where we're trying to accomplish things, get various outcomes, is actually a very complicated and often corrupt system. All right. So if someone says fix the road, right? Actually, the roads are not deteriorating by accident. They're deteriorating by design. Right? Basically what I mean is that every year the roads are done in a manner that every year they will deteriorate and then there will be another contract and there will be so many more kickbacks, and so the system is organized in a particular way. And any of us trying to go and fix that gets tremendous pushback from the bureaucracy, who will find a way to make your file disappear, who will find a way to delay, and they know if I can delay by 3 more weeks, or at least in this case today, for example, by 7 days, this guy's gone to Parliament for 1 month and he'll forget all about this, right? So that's so it's often there's a lot of delay, there's a lot of effort to stall people from getting things done, basically, even if those things are perfectly appropriate and legal and would make life better for everybody. But there's some other parallel set of incentives that operate, and that makes it very difficult for especially a clean politician to get things done. In contrast, you have the more thuggish, corrupt guys who will say, okay man, you want some money, I'll give it to you, get it done, right? Or they will go and threaten people. Say, if this is not done, you're going to get transferred, I'm going to do this to you, whatever. And so those guys actually become much more effective than those of us who are, who are not resorting to those kinds of strategies. And if you think that we guys are the heroes who don't go and behave in that manner or play the corruption game, actually it's a very worrisome thing that overall in society nowadays, what I get is a change in values. People say, look, I don't care if this guy's murdered 100 people, will he get the economy running? I don't know which guy I'm talking about, but I don't care if this guy is like seriously corrupt as long as the job gets done, right? So the basic thing is people's values have changed. So a clean, ineffective guy just has, is pointless, right? You might as well have someone who gets the job done, regardless of whatever else, blackens or reddens their track record. So that's the sort of complication that we face when we are trying to go out there and meet the demands of people who have actually worked to elect you or given you a chance to respond to them. Even the nature of the demands can be very complicated because, at one level, a member of parliament's job is policy at the national level, legislation at the national level, etc. But the person who comes to you will come to you for my garbage hasn't been cleared, which is actually the local corporator's job. Right? So I can show you emails or people's phone calls saying, look, this is gone bad, can you do something about it? So yes, I'll call somebody, we'll do something about it, but it's actually not my responsibility, but the expectation continues to be there. Okay. Now, okay, we do a good job of all these things, we try our best, we're responsive and supportive and all that. Now, what about when do we get evaluated, right? So typically we get evaluated once in 5 years when there is a general election, okay? And that word general election sounds appropriate because it's not only about you and your track record, it's about general stuff. There are lots of other things that get mixed up, right? So someone else is corrupt, and you happen to be in the same party, well, bye, you go. You have nothing to do with it, but that could happen to you. Something else happens in some other part of the world and the economy slows down, well, bye, see you. So that's sort of, there's so many uncontrollable factors, right? And so this kind of what you might call evaluation, which pats you on the back and says, you've done a good job, these were our expectations, things like that, we don't really get the same feedback and signals that we would like. Okay, so this is something that is certainly worth improving as part of the larger system. And lo and behold, there are efforts at evaluating representatives on a more annual basis on a variety of criteria. So in Bangalore, you have the Bangalore Political Action Committee, which has its own methods of evaluating people on an annual basis. There's another group called Daksh, which does the same thing. And in Mumbai, what is that group called? It's called Praja. They also started providing sort of MLA report cards and things like that. This can be quite erroneous in many ways because lots of projects get finished which somebody else started, but you'll get the credit for it. Or those people who are in the outer areas where there is a lot of investment and development will be shown as the best performers. When the nature of the game is not about who did how much, but where the funds are going just because of the nature of growth. So these are much more complicated situations. But if you actually look, in Bangalore city in the last assembly elections that were held here, the city sort of broke down into half Congress, half BJP, 2-3 JDS. But the BJP guys who actually survived in the midst of Congress wave were those who had a very good track record of local problem solving, right? Taking care of their customers, their voters, right? So if you take Raghu in C.V. Raman Nagar, if you meet sort of educated voters, they'll say, oh, he does a good job, he's responsive to us. You'll see the same thing with Ashwath Narayan in Malleshwaram, things like that. Okay, Vijay Kumar in Janagar. These are all BJP MLAs who have very good rapport with the people, a very good reputation as responsive problem solvers, and so they are able to sort of confront this wave and all the other general complications and hold on, right? That sort of thing. Now this is where an opportunity arises, right? So how should legislators and representatives build up that reputation? How do you communicate what you've done? How do you demonstrate your track record and ensure that people think of you as someone who is good and worth keeping? So that's one of the key issues, right? And as these anecdotal examples suggested, there is a payoff from taking care. Actually, if you were to go to the US and look at their story on this front, most MPs and senators are elected to do policy work, right? And there, people's engagement with policy issues is quite intense. Not only do they have pet subjects that they will that they're passionate about, they will also contribute money to candidates, and so there's a widespread. It's like the old Congress 4-ana membership. There's an ownership of a candidate and an agenda and things like that. So people do engage with the political process in a much more active manner. But interestingly enough, there's this kind of problem solving that representatives and senators also take part in, and they call it casework. They have people in their staff whose job it is to respond to constituents' requests and solve their problems. Most often they can be done. Mostly it's bureaucratic, hurdles that need to be cleared or something like that. And there they have a very good system of keeping in touch with those who you helped, right? And just that 5-10% personal vote that they managed to create and cultivate enables re-election rates of more than 90%. Okay, so if you actually look here, anti-incumbency is a given. Typically, nobody expects an incumbent to be returned, right? Whereas there, actually, the rates of re-election are more than 90% because in addition to the larger issues, there is this personal vote which is staying loyal and supportive regardless of ideology and things like that. They say, this guy's helped me. Okay, so question is, where are we going wrong in terms of reaching out to this voting population, and what can we do to fix this, to make sure that representatives get a better, the people, there's more transparency in what was done and how people intervened and what difference they made. Right? So over the years, especially when I was at IIM, I've held workshops for legislators and MPs and aspiring women politicians as well. And so these sorts of things. And so we've talked about using social media to keep track of everything one does. You go solve a problem somewhere, you go and take a photo of that pothole and you say, so I visited this place and solved it. And things like that. Or so there's some psychological features that I'd like to get your response on. One psychological feature has to do with the fact that once a problem is solved, nobody can remember how bad things were earlier, right? Now, so Bangalore Road, by the way, where IIM is, for those of you from outside the city, it's one of our main arteries going south. Okay, built over time in the midst of whatever canals connecting lakes and things like that. So sometimes when it rains, like it's been raining in the last few days, you need a boat. This is about 10-15 years ago. Okay, and I actually had a situation where I once had to catch a night flight to England. Came out of a late class and discovered that there was no traffic moving. And so I actually called my dad and said, please send your driver to this location. I'm going to wade through the water. And left my car behind, walked over, and then, till knee-high water, and then got in, went home, changed, got the flight, and everything was fine. But the point is, then they did a lot of work and repaired the road, they put in some new pipes and all that, and nobody remembers how bad things were, right? So you have to show a before and after picture of how bad things were, and now what a difference we've made. So I keep saying, make sure that in your campaign material, that all that, that's always there. But the other psychological feature is that people who take your help don't like to be reminded that you did them a favor. Okay, so this is crazy. If you say, I helped you, now you owe me, people who are like really resentful of that. Or most often they've forgotten that they needed your crucial help and they assume that they're self-made people who achieved everything on their own. And this is a nasty reminder that that's not the truth. Okay, so this sort of a situation. So we normally do it in a very indirect way. Right? See, when you help, there are two kinds of help, right? There's transactional help where somebody helps you and takes some money for it, and those who just help you in the hope of of the goodwill that comes from it. This is our job. Our dharma is to help people. Okay, so we do it, and so there, especially for the latter group, it becomes a very tricky thing. How do you ensure that people, remember that you intervened and made a difference? And so normally we say, so how's that daughter of yours doing in medical college or something like that, right? And, oh no, doing really well. That's just a hint, by the way. That seat is because of me, that sort of thing. So how do we take care? How do we ensure that that customers actually think positively or remember and then actually reward you at election time with votes and contributions and good propaganda and stuff like that. So these are some of the dilemmas that we face. So what I wanted to sort of end was to basically open the floor, these questions to the floor and say, if you want us, to be in your league, what do we need to do in terms of communicating better with voters about what we're doing? Should we create sort of online tracking mechanisms of every letter that we get? We put down, we log it and track it and say, I made a phone call today and I made a phone call day after tomorrow and it got solved. And, maybe we need a dashboard that's visible. Maybe that's where all these pictures need to come in. And, and here is the other big challenge, right? For all these things, you need significant teams. You need people who can actually, you need to employ a large number of people. And one of the larger conundrums in this space is that politicians are assumed to be mega millionaires, and those who are not actually face a lot of trouble just basically just funding a team to do whatever little work that we need to do. So that's the other challenge. How on earth are we going to make all these things happen, and what will it cost, and what kind of an impact will it have? So anyway, so I wanted to open the floor and ask you for what kinds of inputs would you have? Because we ultimately want representatives who are responsive, who resolve problems, who actually take your inputs and pass good legislation, who really make democracy come alive in its multidimensional ways. So I'll stop there. Let's hear from you, Ram.
Yeah, you mentioned actually somewhere along that you had examples of some of the MLAs who got elected because of the good work that they did.
Yeah.
Why is it not pervasive? Why is it not across the board? I think that in itself could have the answer to your question.
Okay, well, to some extent, some of the MLAs I'm talking about actually are from fairly compact constituencies, and they're spending all their time, night and day, engaging with people, and and in this case, the people I mentioned were all legislators. The moment you become a minister, the moment you get sent to Delhi or something like that, it's that much harder to maintain that daily contact and things of that sort. But frankly, people's decision making is influenced by many other factors, right? It's also, they'll say, oh, this guy has been around for too long, he's too old, let's opt for somebody else. It's not a real reflection on your track record alone. So these guys, the ones I mentioned, have managed to break that and cultivate that image of being very good problem solvers. But they're also really, they just work night and day. Some of them are adept at extracting resources from the system that enables them to do things on a much grander scale. Okay, some of the others are, of course, very, very simple, dedicated guys also. But that also shines through. People don't expect much more. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention to you that people often come asking for money, right? They say, this guy's hospital bill, somebody else's fees, somebody else has this crisis, somebody's wedding, Where on earth are you going to cope with all those personal, and we're talking lakhs of voters, right? Even in an assembly segment. So these are all serious challenges. Some of the ones who cultivate this reputation are very good at there is a MLA on the northwest side of town who runs a darbar every morning, and people will come, and there's so much money that flows every day. Okay, it happens all the time. Okay, so
I can give you a very Aam Aadmi perspective of what they.
Yeah, Aam Aadmi, not in capital A's.
No.
Because otherwise I'll reject it altogether. I'm with the Congress.
So,
okay.
So a very interesting thing that happened in our apartment was we live in this apartment for 7 years, and for the first time after we moved into that area, just before the elections, there was an MLA who came to our apartment to ask us what problems we faced. So a lesson which I learned from that was we never knew we had an MLA. Honestly,
okay.
I'm sure there was someone. We never knew this was the person, or who it was, and what do they do. But
no, let me interrupt you for 1 second. Actually, that's the ideal state we all need to achieve. That government has done its job so well that you don't even know it exists. No, because when do we curse the government? When we go into the pothole, when we have a problem, right? We want to achieve that other state. Go ahead.
So the most beautiful thing that happened in our area was we got built some more tech parks around. So we assumed that had something to do with the MLA. And so he had come over to speak to a few of us just to ask us what problems we face as in the area. So I think one of the biggest things that's missing with population like me, I don't do anything. I get up in the morning, I go to work, and that's what I do. So I have no engagement with the political system, honestly. And that one day where somebody took the time and the effort to come back and ask us, if there's something you guys need, even if it didn't happen immediately, and 2 things out of 10, or less of 10 happened, it would probably change the perspective that somebody like me has about the political system. Would encourage me to wake up.
Sure. So this is actually showing us the pathway to 2 things. One, if you go and engage and get the inputs, you might actually find that there are a lot of low-hanging fruit that you can actually resolve and get your reputation going. The other is that there is a lot of good, well-meaning people who can be engaged, and now, for example, Whitefield Rising is an example of an organization that has started getting involved in so many, civic improvement activities. There have been other groups that have helped to safeguard lakes. There have been, all kinds of, there's a latent passion out there, latent interest out there that can be harnessed, and they can be turned into your allies as well. And much more can be done, and they will become your brand ambassadors going forward. So that's certainly an option.
Also, as leaders, one of the things that it works in corporates. For example, you run a contest. Okay, there's somebody who actually leads the contest, saying you have to sell so many current accounts, or if you do something, and then you reward them with something very small. But then it works in a corporate context. At a public level, if the leader of the local area could, keep your apartments clean and your best apartment, it's a nothing. It could be a certificate or publishing in the newspaper the best lane in this area. The increased level of ownership that would probably come, because it's impossible for any MLA to actually come to cleaning every day or make sure that the corporators are there.
Wonderful idea.
But there's absolutely no ownership. No one cares. Everybody's pointing fingers.
Okay.
Including me. I'm not, somebody has to come and clean, see, it's lying over there, across this area, this dengue, malaria, my child. So we're all worried about all that. But then, are we actually doing the cleaning? We're not. So to increase ownership, just a sudden spike of stuff, and then people get used to having a clean environment and they make sure it doesn't happen.
Sure. No, we've worked with these things, and there's another amazing organization called the Ugly Indian in Bangalore who do anonymous cleanups.
Yeah.
So I actually worked with them. Okay, so I actually worked with them because they know what's wrong with the system, and they don't want credit for cleaning the system. I certainly want the credit for cleaning the system. So we've actually gone and done some really good. We involved a lot of college students, and we got some black spots converted to beauty spots at the end of it. We did some very good work. Yeah, go ahead.
So while I understand you're representing Congress, if this entire thing is taken more like an organization and approached to connect through omni-channel, because today your mass, which is my mass too, because I'm catering to India.
Yes.
I have a subject, you have whole India. It is very important to offer access, to be transparent, to allow people to actually have dialogues through all channels. I think I don't know, but I really enjoyed this entire access, entire update. I was never involved into seeing the political side as much as I have been ever since Mr. Modi has been there, because I had first time got a platform to be able to voice out what I think can be changed in the system.
Fantastic.
And there is an entire thing, there is my government entire site, I have registered, and then I have tried and contributed, and it also asks me whether I want to be actually actively involved in it. Do I just want to volunteer? Do I just want to give ideas? Do I just want to be a part of discussion? And I think that is today's generation.
Okay.
I too don't think I'm today's generation. I think today's generation is much faster. But it is really requiring to be omni-channel. there are pockets of good and bad in every party. So that's why I don't want to get into
No, actually,
aspect.
in fact, what I spoke about is across party lines.
That's why
The
I-
people service, people problem solving part is across party lines. Everyone has the same
Yeah,
challenge.
so-
Okay. The other stuff, of course, is more complicated. But you're right. This
Every time
technology now enables it to be much easier.
During Diwali,
Yeah.
for the first time I received an email from my PM. Of course, he is not doing it himself. I know it, right?
No, you,
First
no.
time- I know. I mean, it is like an organization. First time I got a Diwali wish where, of course, it was action oriented. That's how organizations think. That I want to send an email where there is some action from the customer, whatever it could be. So there I had an opportunity to contribute an idea of what he's going to discuss with UK. So I think that it
Fantastic.
gives me a lot of access and I'm automatically involved.
Sure. You'll be amazed that the political parties have been exactly the opposite. Even those of us who are activists, when we go to a party meeting or a rally, typically 2-3 leaders will speak and then we will go home. That's it. Yeah, even at the highest levels this happens. And we don't get that much of a chance to engage, to give feedback, and so we do that through other subtle channels which may or not be visible, transparent, but we try and do that sort of stuff. Yeah, but that's right. So this is part of his amazing success at connecting with a large number of people. So, no, but it's also, what she was talking about earlier. In India, we've actually gone through this stage where those who were educated in urban and middle and upper class actually disengaged from the political system. Okay, in the last few years, including the India Against Corruption movement and the Aam Aadmi Party and things like that, even here in Bangalore in 2008. 2009, I had organized 25 protest rallies simultaneously against the Ram Sena's attacks on women and their threat to do that in Bangalore without, with Ram Prasad, my colleague here, just a handful of us, because of our linkages with colleges and institutions and the design of the protest, which was decentralized and simultaneous, we were able to get the city up and protest for half an hour and then go back to their daily lives, right? So, but basically, there's so much thinking that needs to be done to engage people, to find the right symbolism and the issues, and so there, Kejriwal and Anna Hazare and all that were very, very good. And of course, the government kept providing opportunities, so for them to grow, and that sort of thing happened. But technology has come a really long way since then, and it's also and there are of course pathologies in the sense that if you go on Twitter. Every time I go on TV and say my bit, when I come back and check Twitter, there will be 20 fellows wishing me death. That sort of early death. That sort of thing. So it's not a very pleasant environment, but this sort of thing.
Customer feedback.
Well, actually, those aren't my customers. They're the other side's customers.
Simplistic level.
No, go ahead. Everything's open. Yeah.
So I think the first part is getting the emotional connect, which you can get from technology, sentiment, understands. For example, you take Bangalore, you associate that with roads, you associate that with garbage. Similarly, you take any other state, you associate with whatever problems they have. So that's one part, trying to figure out what the problem is. The second part is how much is doable. It's nice to have a Swachh Bharat, it's nice to have clean the country, blah, blah, blah. It's a good sentiment. Is it doable in that short span of time? So that's the second part of it. And third is personalization, just like we have in our corporates. When you have two different competing companies, both are offering you on-time delivery, both are offering you customer service. The third is personalization. Actually, like to give you an example that I had, I didn't get my voter's card. But the next year, when we had the elections, the voter's card came to my doorstep.
Okay.
So that was more personalization to me, saying that I struggled with this for 1 year.
How did it come? Who brought?
The MLA for that. Whoever
Okay. No, because this is a tricky one. Many times I'd get people, even at IIM, saying, get me my voter ID card. Well, you can solve multinational companies' problems, but you can't find your local corporation office. Yeah, do it.
The personalization part of this was that you put in the effort. Like you're doing it, you go out there, you go to the company. They don't even find where your name is incorrect, etc. And then you suddenly find there's a new guy who wants to be elected, and he's already done this for you without you even asking. So that's the third part.
I got it. No.
But if you compartmentalize this into these three aspects, you know what's the biggest problem. You know how much you can chew. That's the doable, that's the credibility that you build. And then the third is the personalization. If you
Yeah.
in this, then probably
Sure,
makes a
what you can chew and what you can deliver is really a big challenge. For example, I've been pushing for commuter rail for Bangalore from about 6-7 years, initially as a policy thinker and now as a policy maker. But actually, all we're trying to do is say there's a lot of existing railway tracks. Let's run trains that will go to Whitefield, that will go to near Electronic City, Sarjapur Road, or around this thing, and you can actually, just like the Volvos, took one whole set of people off their cars and into air-conditioned buses, we should be in a position to even move large numbers of people who go to work in these neighborhoods off the roads. And the railways are not too excited. When I tried to broach it with my chief minister, he said, "Hey, this is a central subject. Why do you want me? There's a lot of work we have to do to move things forward." And the last time I managed to move with the railway minister, then he suddenly said, "Look, the budget's coming, and let's discuss it after the budget." Well, it's now 6 months. I'm busy, he's busy, everyone else is, suddenly the whole issue is gone haywire. So it's just this whole, keeping a highly professional, organization, remembering all the issues that we took up and trying to deliver is not easy at all. Yeah, and but it's worth doing, and slowly we figure things out, right? Where do you? Who was that? A recent speech by somebody else who said we got it mentioned in the budget, and then everything else followed. If it's there in the budget speech, you got to do something in terms of government action. Okay, so a lot of tactical learning that's involved.
So I just want to say 2-3 things that are common between what you're seeing as patterns and what you're talking about. In our domain, we're finding a lot of customers want to do things themselves now. As opposed to some time back when customers would want us to do things for them. Nowadays, we find a lot of customers come back and say, "You just enable me to do it. I'll do it myself." And I want to feel empowered kind of doing it. I don't know whether the same sentiment transfers into a voter psyche, where the voter is saying, "You be the person to help me do it, and I'll kind of go and fix it myself," is one kind of thing. And I saw Mrs. Sheila Dixit crack it very successfully with Bhagidari
Yes.
in Delhi, and she's done a great job there. I think that was one of the reasons why she kept getting voted back to power. Or I don't know whether that was the reason why she didn't make it the last time. But so that is one I could figure out. The other, which is a dilemma, is the dilemma of managing expectations. I think for us it's a very big challenge today. Our customers are constantly upgrading their expectations. So to that extent, you're always kind of trying to figure out, and sometimes maybe outdo those expectations and figure out how do you manage this expectation 1%, one step, one by one. In your case, I don't know how does that happen, and because the expectations are just really sometimes too much to kind of manage. So I think between these two, somewhere is what we're trying to do today is to be able to set expectations clearly, make a promise and say, these are the 4 things I will deliver. You like it, take me. You don't like it, let's be very clear about it.
Sure.
I think
you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, if you actually look at our roles, they're very, very multidimensional. All I talked about was the people's problem solver dimension, maybe a little bit of the policy business that came through. But we're also politicians who need to engage and keep building not only our own support base, but control over the narrative. We are, in my case, I need to be a public intellectual. I need to be, influencing ideas and agendas, and to take up 2-3 issues which will give me a chance to say, look, I actually accomplished something, right? And so these are all very complicated. And as you pointed out, ultimately after 15 years, even Sheila Dixit, was sent home for all the work that she may have done. But there have been times, much long ago, before technology. Actually, this is where technology, I think, could play such an active role. What was it? About 6 years ago, we went to Nokia and said, this is 6 years ago in phone technology is a really long time ago. I can assure you. Because that time the idea was that we came up with this concept called Bell the cat, right? I said this whole business of pointing fingers when problems are out there is just useless. Let's change the paradigm. right? So I said, let's create a situation where we have, if there's a pothole, somebody takes a picture, there's some way of identifying the location that gets sent to the appropriate official or engineer, and at the end of it, instead of constantly, pointing fingers at those guys, we start celebrating those who solve more of these problems in a quick way. Just change the whole paradigm from negative to positive in some ways. Anyway, we discussed that with Nokia, and then it's still there in the file somewhere. But now with technology, you can do much, much more. I mean, because now
Just have to ask the general public to send that photo.
Yeah. No, I think I've heard the state, one or two governmental officials, agencies, I think in traffic, or they've been talking about doing.
This you don't need government agencies.
Actually, you don't anymore. No, but this was before before the phones became so adept at taking care of things. But those sorts of things also are empowering people, right? And so we need to figure out ways of doing more of that.
And also congratulate the member of general public who highlighted the issue.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a great engagement.
Yeah. No, it could be for children in schools to go out into the neighborhood and find ways to make a difference. But the one interest, this is where politics gets mixed up in all this. The first big cleanup that we did, right, in RT Nagar. So we went there with the local corporator support, with the engineer support, and in the middle, and we're all the corporators Congress. I'm not an MP at that time, but a Congress leader at that time. And suddenly one of the local guys came and he said, "Who are all of you NGOs in our neighborhood? This is our problem. We'll fix it. Get out of here." Right? I mean, so we're like, boss, you haven't fixed it in 20 years. We're here this thing to clean up the neighborhood, and we're leaving after that. It's yours to enjoy. But we went through 1 hour of tension and and a lot of hostility. And then afterwards, of course, everything dissipated. And I was just glad that there was no media at that moment, right? Because otherwise, that's all that would have been highlighted. Okay, rather than the fact that so much good work got done ultimately. So that part, right? Who are you? What are you doing in my neighborhood? Is this your territory? And all that sort of thing is again another major set of you need thick skin to be able to deal with all of that. Anyway, any other points that you'd like to share? By the way, Ram, I'd like a copy of this because I didn't take down notes, and these are very good suggestions. So please share or put it on YouTube. Let everyone benefit from it.
This is the first time, by the way, we're recording, sir.
Oh, okay. Well,
Last we have not, so.
Okay. Well, please edit it for anything that I might have said that will send me to jail. Anyway, I don't think I did. Yeah. So thanks very much, and all the best. More power to you, and let's stay in touch. If you dream up some new ideas, you'll know how to reach me. It's not difficult. Thanks.
Direct contact is there, no channels.
Sure.
Okay, once again, thank you, Rajeev.
Sure.
I know you have another meeting, and please grab some lunch.
Yeah, and a
someday.
speech on the Green Revolution next.
On the Green
year.
Revolution.
So this is the nature of our lives. Yeah.
Okay, here's a little something from us.
Okay.
Thank you once again.